make this people-powered campaign move. I am thankful for all of you, really, truly, for making the time to come here tonight and allow me to introduce myself to you if we haven't met before, and to answer some of the questions that you have. And I know I met you, sir, on the way in. You've served in what branch of the military? Air Force. Do we have any other veterans here? Yes? Thank you. Thank you for your service to our country. I'm truly grateful. Let's give them a round of applause, please. I think that's kind of the perfect note to start on is both gratitude, but service, and really what it is that brings us all together. I think one of the things that I really opened my eyes to and just grew to appreciate from my very first day at basic training in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, where, you know, we've got a few hundred people in our training company. You've got the male barracks separately, you've got the female barracks. You go in, you dump your duffel bags down, and you stand there and you toe the line, and just, I can visualize it in my head right now, looking around that room. You know, we had people from all different parts of the country, all different ages, all different races, ethnicities, religions, backgrounds. Like, that is America. This representation of this wonderful, diverse fabric that makes us who we are, and that for us, wearing that uniform, whether in training or downrange when we're deployed, there really are no differences between us, because no matter the unique things, the unique qualities or characteristics we may have, we knew without a shadow of a doubt that we stood together, shoulder to shoulder, focused one-pointedly on our mission, that promise, that oath that we all took to support and defend our Constitution and our mission to protect the safety and security of the American people. And so as we look to how, unfortunately, sharply divided our country has become, especially in Washington with the hyper-partisan gridlock, this experience that I had is what I look back to both for hope and inspiration, because it takes us back to the foundation of really of who we are as a country, and the kind of culture of leadership that we need to get back to, that puts the well-being of the American people, that puts the well-being of our country ahead of the hyper-partisanship, ahead of the political games, ahead of the corporate special interests, ahead of those who are acting for their own selfish interests, rather than actually working for the interests of the people. It's hard these days to turn on cable news or to, open up Twitter. Don't ever do it first thing in the morning if you have to do it at all. It's not a good way to start the day. But you see how, just how negative and dark everything is. And I think it's times like this, especially as we approach Thanksgiving, but really all the time, I think it's important to just step back and take stock of who we are as people, how we are all connected. In Hawaii, we call this aloha. When we greet each other with aloha, we are recognizing that we are all brothers and sisters, that we are all children of God, all connected, that we are all connected as Americans, united by the founding principles enshrined in our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. And that as we see many challenges in this country that need to be addressed, as we see the divides ever widening and the need to build those bridges of respect and understanding between us as people, I'm grateful to live in a country that is based on yes, it is an imperfect democracy, but it is a representative democracy that provides us, we the people, with the opportunity, and I would even say the responsibility, to be the change. To be the change. Because in this country, still, no matter how much money or power or influence the very few rich and powerful in Washington have, we have to remember that the power to bring about change, the power to hire and fire leaders in Washington, lies within our hands. And so really that leaves the choice to us to us to shift the direction. If we're not happy with the way things have been going for so long, and this is not a partisan thing, because if you look at the challenges that we faced before Donald Trump got elected in 2016, you watch cable news, it's all about Trump. It's not bringing light to some of the systemic problems that have existed across Democrat and Republican administrations, which are necessary to acknowledge if we ever hope to bring about change that goes beyond the political bickering that takes us from one election to the other. And that's what I am seeking to do, recognizing the root cause of the problem and to bring about the kind of leadership that is truly of, by, and for the people, that really represents that kind of leadership that Abraham Lincoln had in mind for our country, that best honors those who sacrificed to make this democracy possible, so that we together as Americans can truly strive forward towards that more perfect union, imagining what's possible for us as a people. We live in the United States of America. Let's remember the opportunity and the responsibility that comes with that. That when we stand together and make sure that our voices are heard, set aside the partisan divides or all the other labels that are used by those in power to divide us, standing together, recognizing each other as brother and sister, we can make sure that none of our brothers and sisters are in a place where they are sick or in need of care and not able to get the care they need. So healthcare is an issue that's top of mind, and understandably so for so many people. Let's imagine a country that makes sure that we care for one another while still providing the opportunity. If you want to go and choose to get your private insurance, obviously you have the freedom to do so. But as a nation, we will ensure and guarantee that not a single one of us, because life may be down and out, because we may be working hard, but we just have a hard time making ends meet, and we have a healthcare emergency, that you'll get the care, the quality care that you need when you need it. That when we stand together, seeing each other as family, when we recognize we are all connected, we can bring about the kinds of changes to our immigration system, to our criminal justice system, to the different systems within our government that are either broken or completely dysfunctional because they're not serving the interests of the people. We can make this change happen when we recognize the environmental threats that we face, both in this country and around the world. Climate change is such a divisive term these days. You are either an activist for climate change or you're someone who says climate change isn't real. Let's set all that aside and just say, hey, every single American should have the peace of mind that we have clean water to drink, that we have the peace of mind that both we and our kids and their kids will have clean air to breathe, that we'll have a safe community to live in and to leave behind for those who come after us, that we'll be able to maintain and preserve these beautiful open public spaces that we all get to appreciate and to enjoy. These are basic things that are essential to all of us as humanity, and imagine what is possible, the kind of change, positive change that's possible when we stand together for each other and for our future. There's a lot of different issues that will pop up in the news, and I want to answer your questions so that I can tell you how I feel we can best address certain problems and challenges. But to me, it has to come down to this very basic point about how, so long as we remember who we are, and that united we stand, divided we fall. When we stand and treat each other with respect, with aloha, with care and compassion, raising the voices of the people, raising the concerns and the challenges of the people, keeping that at the forefront of all that we do, then we can begin to build that future, that bright future that we want not only for ourselves, but for those who will come after us. This is my personal commitment to every single one of you, to every single American, that as your president and as your commander-in-chief, your interest, the interests of our country will always come first. Thank you very much. We'll open it up to some questions here. Yes, sir.
Evening, ma'am.
What's your name?
Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
It's nice to meet you. So I'm going to be honest, I've heard your name before. I didn't really know a whole lot about your policies until this morning when I listened to you on the Joe Rogan Experience while I was working.
Nice.
And when I was listening
Did you just listen to the show that came out yesterday?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome.
So I agree with you on almost every single one of the policies that you spoke about there. But one thing that you didn't speak about on there, I had to look up for myself. And unfortunately, it's something I disagree with you on, and it's your opinion on assault weapons. Now, please, before anyone thinks I'm a crazy right-wing person, I've done a lot of research. I was raised around firearms. I'm a United States Marine Corps infantry veteran. I know how these weapons work. I know what they do to people. And please just listen to me. So if you look around the world, and if you see countries and states even in America that ban assault weapons or restrict them, you see a rise in violent crime. Look in California, Chicago, even in Boston, New York, and New Jersey. If you look in the United Kingdom, Australia, places around the world, look at Hong Kong. Everyone here, at least I hope, knows what's been going on in Hong Kong. University students had to defend their college with bows and arrows and Molotov cocktails from the Chinese government, who were using assault-style weapons and armored vehicles to push up towards the college. In the past few days, we haven't really heard about much of what's turned out about it. I fear, unfortunately, it was for the worst. But, ma'am, my question to you is, why would you support a federal assault weapons ban, like the one that Bill Clinton did when he was the president, when you see a rise in violent crime when you have something like this? And instead, what I encourage you to do is do some more of your own research, and instead of try to take weapons away from people, educate people. Now, in New Hampshire, we have some of the loosest gun laws in the whole country. I bought my first pistol the day I turned 18. I bought my first AR-15, arm light rifle, the day I turned 18. Now, I'm educated on firearms. I haven't done anything crazy with it. I did target practice, so I can understand the rifle a little more before I went to boot camp and learned how to be an infantryman in the United States Marines. And if you look in New Hampshire, we have some of the lowest crime rates in the whole country. This is the #2 state to live in, only beat out by Washington State. Maine and New Hampshire have literally some of the loosest gun laws, and ma'am, I just don't understand how you can support something which only brings violence. And anyone here who thinks I'm making any of this up, anyone here who thinks this is an opinion, Google it. Just Google it. Look it up. You don't even have to use Google, Bing, Yahoo, whatever you want to use. You can do this research on your own. Don't just listen to the first thing you see on Facebook and CNN. I encourage you to do your own research, because it's a fact. When you see restrictions on firearms, violence only rises. It increases exponentially. In the United Kingdom, knife crime is out of control. Instead of guns, it's people using knives, which, in my personal opinion, is worse. You get stabbed to death, that's a horrible death. And ma'am, as a combat medic, I presume you've seen all sorts of wounds come past you. So my question to you is, ma'am, why do you support something like this when statistics show around the world that when you ban weapons, more violence comes?
Thank you, Ed. Thank you. I appreciate your sharing your own experience and raising this issue. Research is incredibly important. I think that as we as a country look to this question about gun safety legislation, gun reforms, I think that it's important to recognize that there are many contributing factors towards the kinds of mass shootings that we've seen that are often, too often now, crossing our headlines, but also the kinds of violence and deaths that we are seeing in cities like Chicago, you mentioned. I think it's important that as we look at this question, we take a step back and look at the situation in its totality. One example, you've said what the gun laws here in New Hampshire and crime rates and gun violence rates are extremely low. You look at my home state of Hawaii. Guns are not banned in Hawaii, but it's not easy to get one. Requires you to go through a gun safety training course, get that certification that you went through that course, get a background check, number of other things. It takes at least a few weeks to be able to go from the point of training, certification, point of purchase to actually be able to take your gun home. So I would say New Hampshire and Hawaii's laws are probably on very different ends of the spectrum, but Hawaii also has among the lowest, I think, number 1 or number 2 lowest gun violence rates in the country, crime rates in the country. So Hawaii too is very low. Whereas you look at some places like Chicago and others where you see kids are getting shot as they're walking to school in the morning, or they're sitting at home in the living room and a drive-by shooting will take out a member of the family with bullets going through the walls of their home. So I think that as we look at this, let's look at the totality of the situation, that there may be other contributing factors to the overall situation. In my view, there should be a baseline level of gun safety legislation in place that bottom line makes sure that this is not about the law-abiding citizens like yourselves and 98% of Americans who may be gun owners and who are abiding by the law, whatever the state law is in the states that we have. This is about making sure that we have basic, universal and mandatory background checks that actually work, about making sure that those few who are seeking to purchase and use those guns to do harm to others are not able to do so. I think that's really where I'm coming from when I'm looking at the different pieces of legislation that are coming forward or the different ideas on how best to do that. I believe that we must protect our Second Amendment rights. I think that when you look at the Constitution and it talks about a well-regulated militia versus an unregulated militia, I think that provides a baseline level of responsibility for safety, just as there exists with our First Amendment rights, that our First Amendment rights are strong and pervasive, but there is a caveat in there about if they always use the example of the theater. If you're going into a crowded theater and you're screaming something that puts the immediate safety and well-being of the people at risk, that does not fall under the First Amendment safety protections. I think that the debate that we need to have in this country, I think, is one that it requires more conversations like the one that we're having here, to be able to share our different ideas, to be able to listen respectfully and say, hey, maybe you're sharing something with me that maybe I hadn't considered before, or giving me information that I hadn't seen before, and vice versa. So let's come together and actually try to get to the root cause of the problem and not think that just passing a bill through Congress is going to solve everything, because it won't. There are some bills that we've already passed this year in Congress that I think are important. They've passed with bipartisan support. They're sitting before the Senate now waiting for passage. But even if those were signed into law today, we can't be under any kind of illusion that there will never, that we will be rid of violence or crimes in this country. So I think it requires a deeper dive and a willingness for us to have this dialogue, rather than what we're seeing too often, which is just you're either pro-gun or anti-gun, and you either want to come and take all my guns away, or you want to have absolutely, completely unregulated ownership of guns across the country. So I think this conversation needs to continue. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So I really didn't hear an answer from what you said. So I don't understand how more legislation will prevent people who are obviously breaking the law from violent crime. You know, you spoke about all the people who are, or all the violent crime that has happened in America, the mass shootings. How many of those mass shootings happen with someone who's abiding by the law? Zero, right? So, like,
I don't think that's the case.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, how many people who have been the perpetrator of a mass shooting have abided by the law?
Well, look, I mean, just look to the shooting at the AME church in Charleston. If there were, we introduced legislation that closed what we've called the Charleston loophole that would have prevented Dylan Roof from being able to get his hands on the gun that he went in and used to slaughter people who were gathering in their place of worship that day.
He was still not abiding by the law, right? Like,
He was able to legally purchase a gun under the existing law,
my point
which
is,
he should not have been.
my point is, right, that you can legislate all you want. People are going to do what they're going to do. Violent crimes are going to happen, whether it's by a knife, by a hand,
Fair enough.
by a gun or a weapon, I should say. And you can't legislate humanity out of the public. You just can't. And what makes you think that more legislation is going to create less crime, less violent crime? Look at England. You know, there's a firearms ban, right? But in London last year, or as of this year, I think there are like over 190 violent crimes, murders that are unsolved right now. Whereas you compare that to New York City, which is larger, in the same time period, there's it's more, but it's around 290. So you're trying to say that guns are the problem, where people
No,
are
that's
the
actually
problem.
not, that's exactly the opposite of what I was saying.
No, but
No,
you're
I'm-
trying to legislate that.
I
guns-
believe there should be certain gun safety laws in place to make it harder for guys like Dylan Roof to get a weapon that'll go in and be able to kill a lot of people in a very short period of time. But I started out by saying that this alone, it's not going to solve the problem. I don't disagree with you. I think you're right. I think if somebody is coming in with violent intent, whether it be based on racism or whatever else it is, if they are coming in, they want to seek to do harm to others, then yes, I think that they will find a way. But I think that we should try to make it as difficult as possible for them to inflict a mass amount of harm on people.
My point is that.
Sir, thank you, sir. Thank
It's
you.
all right. It's all right. Last thought. We'll finish this up. Go ahead.
Are you preventing people from protecting themselves, or
Not at all.
preventing people from perpetrating crimes?
Not at all. I believe in our Second Amendment rights and our right to bear arms to protect and defend ourselves. What I'm saying is that I think that we should have a basic level of sensible regulation in place to make it so that those who are not trying to bear arms to defend themselves, but instead to do harm to others, are not able to do so. Whether it's a guy like Dylan Roof, or it's a guy who's beating up his wife and threatening to kill her and has been charged with domestic violence.
Which we have.
We do.
Thank you.
Just wanted to respond about the gun situation. I feel that the scrutiny with new laws, if we are able to scrutinize the people that are wishing for guns, we can go into their lives, see their situation, make a determination if you're a good, responsible gun owner, you have nothing to worry about. If you've had military training and you have shown your fabric and you can establish that you are a responsible gun owner, that's a different thing. But what we need to be able to do is get in there, get into the situation, have laws that allow people to scrutinize the situation so that we can determine who is a candidate for owning a gun.
And who is going to abuse that right?
Do you think that that would be subject to abuse by something?
No, what I'm saying is that if you have someone who's going and looking to do a mass shooting at a school, or to use that gun to inflict harm on others, I think is the distinction that you're referring to.
Well, if before you're allowed to purchase a gun, there were laws in place, like in Hawaii, maybe even a little more stringent, maybe even more a psychological evaluation. I'm not sure how this would work out, but there needs to be a lot more that happens before someone gets a firearm, period, end of story. I'm not willing to give the life of my 11-year-old daughter up for your right to have a gun. And furthermore, I feel that maybe it should not be a constitutional right to have a gun, but a privilege, like a car, an 8,000-pound car that you drive down the road. If you drink and drive, you lose your privilege to drive.
I think that the
Make sure you can have a car. Are you going to have the same right? Are you going to have the same?
It's harder to get your license. It just needs to be so much more difficult to go out and spray a gun into a room of children.
I think that I think it's important that we not fall into the trap of thinking that it is a choice between upholding our constitutional rights versus working together for the safety and well-being of our kids and neighbors and communities. It's not a choice between the two, even though that is so often how this debate is framed. And so I think if we look at what the objective is, whether you or we agree with our Second Amendment rights or not, they are enshrined in our Constitution, and we must uphold them. So then the question is, okay, well, we will defend our right to bear arms while also ensuring, to the best of our ability, and to your point, sir, we will never be able to legislate away violence or crime in totality, unfortunately. But what measures can we take to try to prevent more of these tragic mass shootings from occurring? What can we do to try to prevent those very few who seek to do harm to others from having unlimited tools or abilities or weapons to do so?
Do you have a direct path in mind? Do you have specific ideas as to how you're going to implement that?
There are a few that are included in some of the legislation that we've passed, but I think we've got to look at what's been working in different parts of the country.
Can it be something that's unified across the country so that there's some kind of a basis where we're all on the same page? Can we get some of this on the ballot?
Yeah.
I would really rather represent myself on the ballot regarding guns. I really don't need someone to speak for me. I really want to be able to represent my feelings for myself. I think everybody should have the right to say how they feel about something so important.
We don't have a national referendum in this country. We have a legislative and representative democracy, which means you have the choice to be able to look at every one of us who's running for president or anyone who is running to be your member of Congress to see whether or not they are reflective of your views or not, and to make your case. I think that your point about us getting on the same page as a country, I think this is the most important thing, and that can't happen unless we're willing to have this kind of dialogue that we're having here today. Because I do not believe for a second that those who are strongly advocating for upholding our Second Amendment rights are advocating for somebody to be able to go in and get a gun and shoot kids in school. I think that our objective is the same, of this protecting the safety and well-being of our people. So by seeing that as the uniting foundation that we can all agree on, then we can then take the next step and say, okay, well, what makes sense? So you've got certain laws here in New Hampshire that may be working in New Hampshire. Other states have different laws in their states. You know, in Hawaii, part of the requirement as I go into the Honolulu Police Department and put my permit application is they won't put that application through unless they have a number to my doctor. And they call and say, hey, is there anything we need to be concerned about? There are other examples that I think we should look to. I'm not going to claim to have all of the perfect answers myself because I don't. I don't think any one individual does. But I think that we, in order to move forward, have to come together and have this dialogue in order to see what is going to work best at a federal level here in this country, while I think that should provide that baseline standard, that balance, while still respecting, you know, the state of Hawaii will have different laws than New Hampshire, and you got to respect local rule and the state's rights to be able to do so.
Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
We have just a little bit more time. Want to make sure we're going to get another topic. So,
Representative Gabbard, thank you for coming to New Hampshire to speak. I'm a current senior college student and I attend Furman University in South Carolina. Like most college students, I have student loan debt. Do you think students should bear the responsibility of none, some, or all of their student loan debt?
Good question. I think there is certainly responsibility there that students need to bear. I think that we have to go deeper than just that question, because if you look at the student debt crisis that is inflicting people across our country, those who graduated from college maybe decades ago and who are still buried in debt, we've got to look to how and why we got there. I think there's a few things that come to the surface immediately. One is we've seen a continuing rising cost of higher education, but we are not seeing a correlating outcome and saying, all right, well, we're turning out more graduates who are buried in college debt. Are they also getting good paying jobs that are, you know, matching with that kind of inflation, that kind of increase in the cost of the education that's being delivered? The answer to that is no. And so why is it that the cost of higher education is going up? When I talk to a lot of professors and other people within the higher education system, they're saying the administrative cost for a lot of these universities is continuing to skyrocket, but you're not seeing that kind of positive output with people who are graduating and able to go and get a good paying job in the field of their training or their choosing. So let's start there. Number two, we are deeply underutilizing what technology has to offer us in bringing down the cost of higher education and increasing the ability for people to choose what they want to do. I think that we as a society need to get away from this kind of status expectation that you're nothing if you don't have a bachelor's degree. And it's growing now, well, you're nothing if you don't have a master's degree. You'll never be able to get a good job unless you have these two pieces of paper, rather than just looking at, hey, what are the skills that you need in order to get a job in the field of your choosing? Maybe you get those skills through an apprenticeship. Maybe you get it through vocational training. Maybe you get it through online classes that you can get for free at no cost. Or maybe it requires that you go to a 4-year degree, or you go and you get an advanced degree in something. Let's look at the value of what our citizens are getting through our education system, recognize our ability to drastically bring down the cost to that, and hold those educational institutions accountable for those outcomes, and with transparency. So if you're a parent and a student that's looking to go to college, that you'll be able to look and say, okay, well, 90% of graduates going to this school actually graduate and get into a field of their choosing, whereas this school, maybe only 20% of them do. It's hard for you to figure that out when you're looking at what colleges you're choosing right now. So I think we've got to get to the root cause of that in order to address the problem. I think that immediately, right now, student debt should be eligible for forgiveness through bankruptcy, just like any other debt that any of us carries. I think the fact that that is the only debt that has been excluded from qualifying for that speaks volumes to who makes money off of this, right? I mean, it's two entities. It's the big banks and it's our government right now. And with the increasing interest rates, not only are they making money by not allowing it to be claimed under bankruptcy, but they're actually making money off of the fact that people are not able to pay off these student debts for almost their entire adult lives. I think those are some of the immediate things that we look to. I think there are programs that we should look to expanding, that if you're going into a public service field, whether it be healthcare or teaching or a school counselor or a mental health professional, these are not fields that you go into if you're looking to make $1 million. You're going into them because you really want to be of service in that way to your community. Then I think there are debt forgiveness opportunities that exist now, but I think should be further expanded to achieve the objective of two things, of attracting more people to work in these fields and actually getting more of these professionals out into our communities where we are seeing teacher shortages, where we are seeing nursing shortages, and where we need a lot more folks who are choosing that path of service but may feel like they're just not able to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. We have just time for one more question.
Yes, sir. Right here.
Hi, Tolts.
Hi.
I'm Daniel. I also found you through the Joe Rogan podcast as well.
Cool.
I'm gonna take that college question answer as some responsibilities. Yeah. Okay. But that's not my question. My question is these polls that we're supposed to be either filling out or responding to get you to qualify for the debates. I'm relatively new to the whole political picture here, so I'm not, maybe this is some obvious questions, but where are those polls? Are they on your website, or how do you find them, or?
That's a brilliant question that I don't have the answer to.
Okay.
Which is part of the problem. This is part of the problem because there's a lot of polls. Another poll just came out from the Boston Globe the other day, I think 2 days ago, that showed me in 4th place or 5th place in New Hampshire. They had me polling at 6%, but it's not a qualifying poll that the DNC recognizes. I think there was another poll that came out right after that, again, showing us, hey, we're building, our support is growing, we're making progress, but the DNC won't recognize as a qualifying poll. So the DNC has on their website a list of the pollsters that they recognize as qualifiers for the debate, which is one thing, but the second thing that is a completely unknown quantity is who are they polling? Are they polling at all? And last time we checked, half of them weren't even polling anything or anyone. And you know, again, I think looking at, you know, there was and how are they polling, I think, is the last thing. How are they polling? They've got these surveys that really are not reflective of like a national survey where they claim it's a representative national poll, but they only talk to something like 300 people in the country. You couldn't even, if I ran a poll in my home district, my congressional district in Hawaii, and talked to 300 people, people would throw that in the trash and say, that's a bogus poll. How do you say that that's a representative of one congressional district, what to speak of the entire country, when you're only talking to 300 people and maybe 80% of those people are, you know, only one, you know, all over the age of 60, for example, only one demographic of individuals. So I think there are, what we're just telling people is if you get an unknown number, and I hate to ask you to do this, but if you get an unknown caller, answer the phone. If it's a telemarketer, I'm sorry, but it may be a pollster calling, and would love to have you having your input. And keep an eye out, though, because I've had some folks here in New Hampshire especially who said, hey, you know, yeah, I finally, like, yes, I got the call, and I kept waiting for them to say, okay, well, Tulsi Gabbard, that happened to you? And they never said my name. Yeah, exactly. So that's the other thing. And so if you get that, like, hey, reach out to our campaign, let us know, because that's something that's not being reported in the news, and they're saying, hey, here's a poll, here's a poll, here's a poll. And if they're not even giving you the option to choose your candidate, then how can you say that's a legitimate poll? I think that's part of the problem. You're telling me, sister. I was standing there. I was ready, boy. I was like, oh, maybe this one. Maybe this one. Nope. Maybe this one. Nope. Okay, this is, nope. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. And to your question, I mean, this is, it's unfortunate the approach that they've taken is one that is not best helping to further strengthen our democracy and your ability as voters to make an informed choice. A couple of the people on those stage have a problem with that. But this is where what we're doing and what we're focused on, debate or no debate, no matter what the corporate media is doing, I am extremely focused and inspired and hopeful and excited about our goal, which is doing one thing, which is doing things like this, using every platform available, whether it's town halls like this, which we'll be having a lot more of before you all vote in New Hampshire, or going on platforms like the Joe Rogan show that has, I think, reaches way more people than watched the debate the other night. Going on Fox News, I'll go on MSNBC, go on CNN, doing interviews with your local media, pushing, social media out, just reaching out to people every opportunity that I can to let them know who I am and why I'm offering to serve as your president. Because the more that we're seeing that reach grow, and this is where I want to ask for your help, the more that we're getting our message out there. Maybe we'll agree on some things, disagree on others, but you can be guaranteed knowing that my personal commitment is to serve you, to place your interests above all else. And the more people who learn this and understand this, the more that our support in our campaign continues to grow. And so on that note, I want to hand it over to Shani, who's going to just share a little bit of information about what you can do to help, because we need your help in order to win, and we aim to win. Here's Shani.
Thank you guys all so much. So yeah, I just wanted to let you know we are coming around. We have some volunteers, and we are coming out to ask for your help. We have a card, a pledge card. It says, Tulsi can count on me. And we're asking you to find some way, if you can, if you're interested, if you want to help us grow, if you want to help bring Tulsi's message to your family and friends, to your neighborhood. There's some small things we're asking you to do. Talk to 2 friends. In the next 2 days, have this conversation and let them know what you heard here tonight and what it is that inspires you and gets you excited about this campaign. If you want to do something bigger, host a house party. We're trying to get into every neighborhood, into every house, and talk to as many people as possible. So if you have a house that you can host a group of people in, or if you know somebody that might be interested, or if you know another amazing venue that we can go to reach more people, please let us know. Sign up, give us some information. We'll get back to you. We'll have a conversation. We'll figure out how you can help. And there's a couple other options on here, and the only thing we ask is just make sure to give us your information so we can also contact you. Phone number, email, all of it, so that we can make sure that we make that touch. So thank you guys all so much, and we have volunteers coming around to give you these.
Thank you so much, Shani. Our campaign is a truly people-powered campaign. We take no PAC contributions, no lobbyist contributions. It's literally, the $1 and $5 and $10 donations coming from people like you that's making this campaign possible. So I want to thank you for making the time to come tonight, for keeping an open mind and considering supporting my campaign if you're not already. I'm going to stick around for a few minutes. We can take some pictures. I want to say hello to every one of you. And most of all, thank you and have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Aloha.
So Jade's going to come up here right to the front, and you can line up right behind her for a picture.